Hello everyone, and thank you very much for tuning in. I, of course, am Rotype. Welcome back to Cedar Valley Redux, where this little bit of field going on here is probably most of what I've done in between episodes. But as always, we will go through everything that you missed in between episodes. I write my lists down so nothing comes as a surprise. Also, not a surprise should be the fact that this view does not get very many frames. So you saw I probably had to pause the simulation, and I'm going to try and not look downtown, which is unfortunate because it's kind of a nice view with the skyline and everything. I mean, especially if I turn these LODs off, give you a short view of that. See how that looks much better, but I'm not even going to try and move the camera here. So turn the LODs back on and swing around here. So as I mentioned, this is a lot of what I was working on, mostly just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with this area. And I believe this train track was not here doing this last episode, so I brought that in. You can see this is just our corner, this is where we worked last episode. Brought the train in here, another connection from this other branch, and just kind of stuck it in this way to what I believe we talked about a little bit last episode, but didn't really do anything with, is our industrial area here. And these are all in the Brooklyn theme of industrial buildings, just these kind of flat-topped warehouses, with the exception of a few things up here by the train tracks. Wow, that was very loud. Hopefully that's not too loud for you guys. I'll try to remember to turn that down in post. I'm going to stick over here so I don't get that loud noise. So you'll see here a lot of these are some of the ploppable Ricos, these little warehouses here. Let's see, this couple big buildings over here. I left these big empty spaces because I'm going to turn them into industrial lots, but I didn't do any of the detailing yet, obviously. And then this actually is a train station, so hopefully we'll get a little bit of some train use here. I don't want a ton of trains coming in and out because I feel like this would be just a less frequently used freight line, but I did want to see if I get some trains in here. Plus, it's not a half bad asset. I mean, it does have these kind of very bright colored containers, but it's not too bad. So let's see, this is all zoned, like I said, and if we jump into the roads or the zone menu, you can kind of see it's just a basic grid. The train tracks I already spoke about. Let's see, I'm going to go back to my list here. I'll pop over here. I renamed this whole area. I'll turn on the district view so you can see Crescent Strip, mostly just because this is kind of looks like a crescent. Crescent Beach was a name that kind of came to mind, but it's more like a strip of as far as bars and things. So I went ahead and named this area Crescent Strip. Again, I still have several little neighborhoods or not so little neighborhoods that need names. So if you have any ideas, feel free to let me know and I will go ahead and rename them. Let's see, looking at my list, what else did I work on? Oh, okay. So I spent quite a bit of time in here in both Wrongston and Westside and even a little bit of Crescent Strip working on the corners. Now, if I zoom in real close, you can see that these buildings are all clipped together and it's kind of weird looking. But if I'm zoomed out just a little, I think it looks a lot better because these wall-to-wall buildings continue to be wall-to-wall around corners. Now, I did this to myself a little bit with these grids that aren't perfect grids. You've got all these kind of weird angles and things. I mean, up here in Westside, these are mostly square grids, so these square buildings work great. But down here, this angle, obviously we fixed it with this fire station many episodes ago. But all of these on this slanted grid here, these weird corners, you can see here. So I basically just grabbed some wall-to-wall building from farther down the street and then tipped it to an angle and brought them in together to make it look a little bit, I don't know, less weird. I don't think I have any spots particularly left. It's almost like this, except if instead of a road, you had some more buildings, you'd have this kind of weird empty pavement area. So I went through and, like I said, just went to each of these corners, although this will be a good example. A corner that I apparently forgot to do, so I can just show you what I've been up to make this look a little bit more realistic. I mean, like I said, if you look really closely, it's kind of weird, but it's not too bad as is. Whoops, wrong button. And we'll get out of move it. There we go. So now you can see the corner just looks a little bit better than an empty space. So here even, I've already done it, but actually I think what I'm going to do is bring this out just a little bit because the sharp 90-degree angle of a building of like a commercial building just looks kind of weird to me, especially without a storefront. So you figure that people would probably try to use as much street front as possible. And even this looks a little bit weird. So I'm going to actually go ahead and find a single space. Here we go. One of these will work. And again, you'll get just a little mini demonstration here of what I've been doing in this neighborhood. Just kind of tucking, and they don't have to be perfect because it's going to look weird when you're all zoomed in anyway. But from farther away, you know, you can look at it from this point and you don't really notice that tiny gap that I left. You just kind of see wall-to-wall buildings around the corner. And that, I think, really helps with the aesthetic, especially when you're kind of, like I said, zoomed out like this. This neighborhood looks a lot more complete than it used to. I obviously still have some work to do kind of back in here. This area is not done. And I didn't do so much of it in Crescent Strip because I'm not using these wall-to-wall buildings. I'm using these specialty buildings, and they don't obviously work so well. So I'm going to figure out what to do. I did just kind of go in and use Surface Painter, as you can see, to just paint in concrete everywhere. And that's almost more to highlight to myself that I'm not done with this area. You know, I need to do something to make this look a little more realistic than just concrete everywhere. And whether that's details and decals in one word, or more buildings, a slightly different road connection style, I'm not sure yet, but we'll go in and finish that off a little bit later. The other thing I did, let me look at my list here, is kind of take care of just this little corner. I was running low on water supplies, so this is actually a water pumping station that I put two of them down and clipped them together, connected that into the water pumping station, and then just built myself a little bit of a funeral parlor. I mean, it looks kind of weird again when you're zoomed in this far, but just to get some more hearses around because, man, I don't know what the deal is. I mean, death waves are a thing in this game, but holy cow, every once in a while, just a complete lack of hearses. I feel like I don't even know how many cemeteries or funeral homes I have in this city, but it is a little ridiculous how many I have. But so I added more, and like I said, a little parking lot, just some brush decals kind of to blend it in. So this corner I think works pretty well. I like the way it came out. And I believe that is it. Again, I'll check my list here. Oh, okay, a couple other things. This is why I write things down. I have decided to turn this strip between the rail line, it's almost easier to see with that off, between this rail line and this avenue here, you'll see I've named this commuter path. And I talked several episodes ago about making what used to be a rail line into a commuter path because that's what I see a lot in real life, and it's a useful way to get bikers and other people into town. So I decided that I do still want to keep that rail line there, but there's nothing really stopping me from making a small linear path next to it with basically just like a bike lane. And this game, the pedestrians kind of bike on, whoops, sorry about that frame jump. The pedestrians kind of bike on regular footpaths, but I think I might try to maybe overlay a bike path and a footpath to represent a true multi-use path. But anyway, this will be a linear kind of commuter bike path out to here. And as you can see, I'm doing my planning with my district lines here. I think I might have it come in again this way to represent a kind of network out into the suburbs. You know, if you live out here and you want to work in town, you can possibly hop on this commuter bike path and take it in one way or the other. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it over here because as you can see, we're kind of jutting against the highway. Maybe it'll get a bridge, but then we're over here in this kind of industrial area that's not so great. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it over here yet, but what over here, it does kind of dead end. You'll see right here. But what I went ahead and did is change Ralston Avenue to have bike lanes on it because I figured that would be a nice thing. I mean, I would love to have bike lanes if I lived here. And that way, if I say lived out in the suburbs and worked, I don't know, downtown somewhere, you can come in on the bike path. And then when the bike path ends, you just hop on, you actually get a bike lane to come across. So I changed this whole road, including this bridge, all the way down to here into a road with bike lanes. And I also changed this bit of Waterside Street from here, where it becomes an avenue, all the way up to, I believe, right up here. Yes, where it ends right here and becomes Harris Boulevard. So this also has bike lanes. I was going to do the rest of Waterside Street, but frankly, I'm worried it's going to screw with my seawalls. if I upgrade things. So I'm a little bit wary of doing that. I might still do it, but we'll see. I mean, it would be really nice if you come in here and Waterside Street comes all the way in. So you can imagine you live in the suburbs, you kind of come in on this bike path, and then, yeah, you have to bike on the road, but you at least get a bike lane all the way along the riverfront. I think that would be really nice. I don't know how much the Sims will use it, but it's nice in my head. But like I said, sometimes your seawalls can act a little finicky, so we'll have to see how that goes. That's the goal, but we'll see. So hopefully we can get some significant bike use, which will help a little bit of the traffic problem. This, believe it or not, is actually the largest city I've ever built in this game. I mean, I don't know, over 1,000 hours in this game, and I've never built a 90,000 person city before, mostly because I decide I want to do something different, or I don't know, I get a different idea, but I really like where this is going, so I'm sticking with it. And along with this large population, we're getting, obviously, some kind of traffic issues that I haven't really dealt with before. However, I think we're mostly doing okay. If we just kind of take a quick peruse around the city, I think around here, this is probably the biggest kind of traffic issue right here. You can't really access all directions of the highway from here because I forgot to put in the extra segments on this side of the trumpet. So maybe that will help, especially as we build out this way. But other than that area, I think we're doing okay on traffic. Every once in a while, you get little backups. I mean, this is obviously not the most ideal intersection setup here, but it's not like it's crazy and backed up for miles. So hopefully the combination of the bike lanes plus in one of the next few episodes, we will eventually get into the mass transit features, and especially the Metro Overhaul mod, which I really like, is mostly because I feel like most big cities have subways that promptly go above ground as soon as they get out of the urban area. So what I'm thinking is we'll put some subways in here, but as they go out in one of these directions, these will probably be our main suburbs out this way, maybe across the river, some suburbs out here. That's when we're going to want our subways to not actually be underground. So that will be coming up. But this episode, I want to turn back to Southside here, which I don't remember if I had that district name or not, but I have decided to call it Southside, again, because we'll go to our little alignment strip here. It's pretty much south of the city, and it's kind of a generic name that I feel like works pretty well for an industrial area. So we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into Southside, maybe little details, mostly just kind of messing around with some Rico buildings to make this look a little bit less monotonous. I mean, it does look good, but we need to mix it up a little bit. So that is what we're up to in this episode. Okay, enough talking. Let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, I've done a little bit of just initial setup here with a couple of these Rico buildings and then zoning in with these Brooklyn buildings. And I think this is kind of the general theme that I'm going to be looking for when I'm done. Obviously, there are a lot of details that need to go in, especially these empty lots. And now that I'm looking at it, we need to fill in just this little bit. There we go. But I like how this looks. I mean, it's nothing fancy. It's just a couple buildings interspersed with these these zone buildings, some parking lots. These will be, like I said, some yards with stuff. And then the rest of this I just zoned in. But what we're going to do today is really mix this up so it's not so homogeneous. We have this Brooklyn building, which look really good, but I think they need some other buildings to break them up and other things like parking lots and empty lots. Because like I said, I think this, if you look at maybe just from Carroll Street towards the highway, this is the final look I want, plus details. So we'll have to go through and break these up a little bit. We're getting a little bit of these corner things too. I love these little alleyway streets, but the annoying thing is they don't do corners well in the zoning. You can see the zoning gets all messed up when you corner them. So we're going to have to take care of things like that. But first things first, let's just find some other buildings to mix up this layout. Now I'm just going to be kind of roaming around through my Rico menu and seeing what I want to mix in. Now I've left these two spaces a little bit more open to possibly build a more cohesive unit instead of just kind of, buildings and things. So I might delay working there, but for now, Let me just go in. It's a little hard to see with all these buildings zone in, but luckily we just bulldoze them with the placement. And the nice thing about doing it this way is I can place these, and some of these have some lots, but if you were to build right up next to them, it would still look a little weird. Like, okay, here's some parking, but maybe we want, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and add some more parking around behind. So I guess the point I was trying to make is if you just plop a bunch of these right next to each other, it looks a little too claustrophobic and a little bit less realistic, I think. So we're going to see what we can do to make it a little bit better. So let's see. I'm just going to stick this in. Well, you know what? Let's do this here. And then we can give it its own little entrance road, which should probably be off the alleyway. So yeah, and then you get things like this where I add the entrance road and it's going to leave these gaps. So you'll notice, I think that happened to me up here somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. So a couple places I just grab, move it. Similar to the way I did the corners over in Roxton. Just grab some zoned buildings with move it and place them in where it will look a little bit better, even if they won't zone there on their own. We're going to move this up so it kind of aligns. And as always, we're going to turn off parking. There we go. So that'll be that. We'll get a couple buildings in here, and I'm okay with that, I think. So for this purpose, I am going to... This is kind of annoying. You have to set it first and then fix. There we go. So see, try to get these to grow back a little bit. And that way this will be like a little alley into the parking and then an alley up to the front. And I'll probably fence that off. Let's see what this looks like when these buildings grow in. And you know, when it does things like this actually looks to me like a great place to just put another parking lot. Although it did fill itself in a little bit. I am just going to do that though. And then give it its own entrance. It's a little off. You know, I don't know if I like that. Bulldoze this building out of the way. Yeah, see, the problem with the parking lot being this way is you have to either build two curb entrances or it just kind of looks weird. So we're actually just going to go with a smaller parking lot. Well, that was probably 4x4. Now what I really want is... I don't even know if I have one that small. 2x2 maybe? Think about how I want to do this. I might be able to manipulate these into something that I like. What I really want, I think, is something like this, but tucked in. The unfortunate thing about this is there's still no place for someone to drive up in. So if I do this, whoops, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted either. Let's see if I can get this out of the way. Yeah, there we go. I think this is what I want. All right, so we're going to do this again with the proper parking. And I'll have to rotate it 90 degrees, but that's fine. So one at a time. Let's go into move it. I don't know why it's not letting me in move it. There we go. And I'll just turn these into two parking spots. And this way, you really actually get to see the place where vehicles are going to be entering. Sometimes I feel like that is something that's overlooked a little bit. You know, people will place parking and it'll be like right up against a building or something. And so it won't quite look right. And it'll be a little confusing why until you take a look and see that you need a place for the vehicles to actually access the parking. It's kind of a funny thing to forget, but it's easy when you're just kind of meddling around with things like this. There we go. And this way we leave this building, and actually I can take zoning off here. And that way this building will just stay exactly as is. This will look a little bit better if I fill in some pavement. Just zone that in like that. There we go. So yeah, I think that looks a lot better. And this, again, is kind of the theme I'm looking for. We'll go through, these will zone in, but these could do with another copy facing this way. And they're just these generic garages, but it looks better if you do this. Yeah. Oops, wrong button. Yeah, so again, this is kind of the little bit of space, a little bit of yard, a little bit of road entrances. that we're looking to add in here. So what else do we have? We have some, let's see, maybe another one of these. I do like this building a lot. We can stick this one in the corner. I should have used turned anarchy off for that, but ooh well. We'll have to just kind of bulldoze a couple of these buildings. And then, yeah, so when you bulldoze these buildings, you really kind of get a nice view of what you're dealing with here. So this, need to bulldoze a couple weird, oh, that was unfortunate. All right, well, we can put that back. It was this one. This way, please. There we go. So now I'm going to de-zone these because this to me looks like, oh, hey, if we put a road up like this, this is our new entrance into this section. And again, maybe some parking, which I already had selected. So I want it to be 2x4 actually. 2x2. I thought I had a 2x4. I'm gonna pop up this 4x2 goes this way. Nope. Why is this go away? There we go. 2x4. There it is. I just missed it. Good. So now this, you come in, you go around, you park here. Excellent. And for back here, we'll turn this again and we'll fence it off, turn it into some kind of lot of some type. Over here, this is actually a great place for maybe garbage, which is another thing that I feel like we need a lot more than is a little bit realistic, but that's okay. We'll just kind of, and this we can kind of stick in back here and we can kind of play with the extra space a little bit. So we can do that. Before I forget, turn parking off on that road. And there, so now we have, let's clear the zoning. Now we have kind of almost 3 blocks that are done with this. So I'm gonna take a quick cut and jump through the rest of these blocks, just doing the same thing. Plopping a Rico building, probably some parking, leaving space for a yard, and I will be back in just a minute. Okay, an hour and a half later, and this is what we have. You can see I may have accidentally built an entire power plant. I was looking at these bigger blocks that I mentioned and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the space. And I figured, I'd just drop in a couple of these bulk areas just to mix it up from all of these warehouses. And then I thought, well, they need something to do with the bulk material. So I plopped some of these towers and then I dropped a power plant and, well, yeah. So here we are. We have a power plant in the middle of our industrial zone. And I think it looks pretty good. Obviously, there's a ton of detailing that needs to be done. All of this grass needs to go away and all of this concrete needs to be either decaled or propped or, stuff like this can't stay. But I think it looks really cool. I mean, it's obviously not an enormous power plant, and I don't know, maybe it's a power plant, maybe it's not. A lot of these assets are power plant assets, so, but they don't have to be, just kind of some raw materials processing zone. I did stick these power planty type electric poles over here, and I ran the poles out this way along the track these actually connect down to my little reserve area, which actually I don't even know if I'll need this anymore, but that's there. Eventually, we'll probably need poles going out this way. So I follow them along the track here, which probably means these can go away. We'll go ahead and bulldoze these. There we go. And yeah, so I'll fix that later. But for now, you can see the poles kind of nicely trace the track. They come across this little overhead area here and then connect in with this area. I might try and get some more of these kind of coming out like this a little bit. See if this actually looks any good. Not really. So I might fiddle around with this again. As I do the detailing, I'll be changing around a lot of this stuff. But as far as the rest of the area goes, it was pretty much what I was talking about before, where I just plop in one of the Rico. Like this is a good block to talk about, where I just plopped in this ploppable Rico, and then when I did that, it automatically bulldozed a couple of these buildings. So I de-zoned a few areas, dropped a parking lot here, put in this street. Again, I mentioned this before I took that cut, but pretty much the idea is to give everything a entrance street, so it doesn't look like it's just plopped onto a street with a curb and no real easy way for cars to drive up into it. So you'll see I just kind of went in and in a lot of places just put some, curbs or curb breaking entrances. Just while we're over here, I'm going to fill in this corner a little bit. And then this obviously was the other task, aside from kind of plopping the Rico buildings and dealing with the curb entrances, is just sealing up weird angles like this one is actually, I might leave. I'll have to figure out something to do with that. But things like that where, you know, the zoning got a little messed up because of all the different road types. And so I just went in and copy pasted some other buildings. This actually might be another good place for it. Yeah, so I'll just grab one of these and place it in there. You know, like I said before, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just fill in the zone. So especially when you're zoomed out like this, I mean, most of the time we're going to be looking at it like this and everything looks kind of nice. The corners are neat and sharp. So I think this looks really good. I mean, the whole point of this was to mix up mostly the roofs, but just kind of the spacing and the shapes of this area. So we have some of these taller box buildings over here. We've got the slanted roofs here, the different, I don't know, almost barn, train yard, I guess, kind of buildings, but those look pretty nice. So I think this came out really well. So I am going to now have to do some detailing, obviously. So as usual, I'll jump into a time lapse for that, and I will see you at the end. Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of time lapse or long bit of time lapse. I realized I'm probably going to edit it down so it's not that long. I even did a bunch of detailing off camera, not even in time lapse recording mode, because this actually took about a day to detail all of this stuff. I pretty much just started, I think, right here in this corner and went down and then came back up and then down. And there are a lot of blocks in this industrial area that had to get done. So I did actually really kind of enjoy myself. I think I've talked about this before. I tend to, I think, do industrial areas a little bit better than residential areas or commercial areas, just because I like playing with the pallets and the dirt decals and all these kind of things. And while I'm at it, I'll mention, we get a little framey over that way, but we'll take this view. I'll mention that Bloody Penguin's revival of the ambient occlusion mod, holy cow, like makes everything look so much better, especially when you get these kind of longer sun angles. Like picture like this kind of angle with these long shadows and the occlusion of the different screen spaces and stuff. I really noticed this when the ambient occlusion mod was fixed, when Bloody Penguin did a bit of work to get that back. So I just feel like I gotta shout out that, because that is what makes this look so good, and why, as much as I usually like to take kind of nighttime shots and detailing shots, I always take in the daytime, but I might start taking these kind of, I don't know, evening dust type shots. I mean, number one, you get the solar, what are they called? I don't know, sun shafts, whatever the technical term is, but you also get the ambient occlusion, just making these things look absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, that is all the time I have for this episode. I really enjoyed it. I think this came out really well. I hope you do too. If you do, go ahead and click that like button. As always, I'll be back next week with another one every week on Saturdays, another episode of Cedar Valley Redux. If you don't want to miss it, go ahead and click subscribe. I hope to see you there. But until then, my name's been Rotype. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.